Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Erin and I work at AARP Vermont based in Burlington, Vermont. Thank you so much for joining us today. First, I'm just going to talk a little bit about AARP and then we'll jump into today's content. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit. Yes, it is a nonprofit, and it is a nonpartisan organization that's dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. The vision of AARP is to have a society in which all people live with dignity and purpose and can fulfill their goals and dreams. With a nationwide presence, including right here in Vermont or whatever state you're zooming in from, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocate for what matters most to older adults and their families. They focus on health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. And here are some specific examples of how AARP does that. AARP provides education on new laws, consumer fraud and scams, and retirement planning. AARP advocates at both the federal and state levels on issues such as Social Security, Medicare, prescription drug prices, and the cost of housing, transportation, and utilities. AARP builds community through programs, events, and local partnership, like today's class. And AARP works to make states more livable for all ages by supporting safe and walkable streets and age-friendly housing and transportation options. Additionally, through the AARP Foundation, there are two free volunteer-driven services, the Tax Aid Program. And hold on one moment, I'm just going to mute someone. Oh, did I mute? Okay. Additionally, through the AARP Foundation, there are two free volunteer-driven services, the Tax Aid Program that provides free tax support. Maybe some of you got that services this year, or I think it's another week to go before they're due. And then the Driver Safety Program that provides free classes to be safe on today's roads. To get more information and details about what I just shared and so much more, you can go to aarp.org. I'll also put some links into the chat that you can explore. Today's virtual event is about building community, learning, and of course, some fun. To find future event opportunities from AARP Vermont, both in person and virtually, you can check our events page. If you're not based in Vermont, you can find event opportunities in your area on the local aarp.org page. Additionally, if you're only interested in virtual events, you can explore AARP's Virtual Community Center. I will also put links to all of this into the chat shortly. We also have 3 more of these Mindful Movement Monday class series. So I'll put the specific link to those classes into the chat so you can click and explore the upcoming ones. There's 3 more. They're Mondays in April. It'll be really fun. So lastly, AARP has thousands of volunteers nationwide who donate their time and talent in person or from home to improve the lives of older Americans and their families. And a special shout out to anyone on today's call that's a current or previous volunteer. Thank you so much for your time and commitment to supporting your communities and partnering with AARP. If you're interested in learning more about becoming an AARP volunteer, you can go to volunteers.aarp.org. I'll also put that link to the chat. So lots of stuff coming to the chat for you to explore. And the chat text, as well as this recording, will be shared. So you can reference things put into the chat via that recording. So before I pass it over to some housekeeping items, we recommend you use the side-by-side speaker view, but I'll also highlight the presenter. So that will be the largest tile on your screen. You can have your video on or off, but please keep yourself on mute. If you have a question, an issue, or anything like that, put it into the chat and I'll be monitoring that. And we'll be pausing throughout the class to review questions and see what we can get answered today. We won't be able to get to every question during our time, but we'll do our best. This event is being recorded and it will be shared via email. Like I said, it includes the chat text. And then just a note to always check your email spam box. Sometimes that's where AARP emails land. If you would benefit from closed captions, you can click the Show Captions button on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. That's a great way to see the text just laid out in large font at the bottom. If you have any issues with that, let me know, put it into the chat, and I'll try to help you set that up. So again, questions or comments into the chat. This is being recorded. We'll share it out later. Video on or off, but please stay muted. And so thank you so much for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Julia.
Hi, you guys. My name is Julia. I'm going to be going over some stuff about posture and alignment. I'm just going to pull up my screen here for my presentation. So just give me 1 second and I'm going to get going with that. All right. So today we are talking about posture and alignment. And when I mention that I'm a posture coach to people, all I see is gotta sit up straight, nice and tall. And people are just self-conscious when I mention it. And I'm genuinely not just staring at people's posture when they are meeting me and I tell them that. But there is this level of people are needing to stand up really tall. And what I've found over time is that people don't actually understand what posture and alignment means and how to actually stand up with comfort. A lot of times when people stand up nice and tall, they're like, oh, this is actually like a lot of work. I can't hold this for very long. And so then they end up going back to their initial posture. So looking at this first picture here, you can probably recognize that position, whether you've sit in that or sat in that position, or you know someone that has sat in that position from when they're looking at their phone, when they're on their computer, whenever they're doing something that's in this forward position, it's probably a very common thing that you see. So what we're going to go over today is how to stand with confidence and ease, as well as sitting, and then how to kind of help maintain those positions so that they stay nice and strong. So a little bit about me. I'm a personal trainer and I specialize in strength, biomechanics, and mobility. I really help people feel stronger. I love helping people that don't love traditional movement, that have had bad experiences, don't feel comfortable. And so I really have structured my practice around those types of individuals, people that just want to live functionally and not necessarily push themselves to their limits, although that can be fun. What I want to help people with is just live their lives day to day. So I have a studio in downtown Burlington, Vermont, which is where I am right now. I take personal training clients as well as teach classes and do different workshops and things like that. So today we are talking about growing your foundation through posture and alignment. And so we're going to go over aligning yourself from the bottom up. Now, I start at the bottom because your feet are your foundation. That's how you're in contact with the ground. So we're going to use that foundation to really help support the rest of our body and to understand how all these movements are going to be impacting each other. We're going to also go into a little bit about breathing and how that is impactful to posture and alignment, as well as different types of postures and what that actually means and how that's related to alignment and what the difference between posture and alignment actually is, as well as some strength and mobility exercises for supporting those two things. So when we're talking about alignment and posture, they are two separate things, but they're very interconnected. If I'm talking about alignment, I'm talking about stacking, the ease of standing up or sitting where things are sitting on top of each other. So my head is sitting on top of my shoulders, which is stacking my vertebrae and my rib cage and everything on top of each other so that I'm standing or sitting nice and tall. And I'm not being pulled in one direction or the other by my bones or just the way that I'm holding myself. So I'm finding ease in this aligned position. A posture is different. A posture is any way that you are holding yourself. So there's no such thing as a right or a wrong posture. You can hold yourself up in all sorts of different positions. And it's really helpful to strengthen in all different areas when it's coming to posture. When we are living our lives day to day, although we can do a lot of training in order to help us so that we are staying strong and we're able to achieve those things, sometimes things happen and we can't necessarily be in control of every single little move that we do. So learning how to strengthen your body in different and kind of weird positions that may mimic real life is really going to help you stay strong and help you prevent injury. So really working on all postures is going to be the best. And then learning to align and find that as your comfortable standing and sitting posture. So when we're talking about finding alignment, there are a variety of things that you want to be considering. And one of them is a physical assessment, which we're going to do the very basics of today. You're going to do your own personal assessment. If you find that you are struggling to figure that out, or something doesn't feel right, or it's uncomfortable or whatever, I really suggest that you go to a local movement professional that will help assess you and get you into the proper alignment that you're looking for. And then they can assess you for other things past just alignment when it comes to movement and things like that, so that you can really get the most out of it. And it's more about just being more efficient when we're talking about alignment, rather than just kind of pushing yourself to feel as strong as possible. Although that is good to focus on strength, we're talking here about just being at ease. Like I mentioned earlier, the stacking, we're going to get a better understanding of what that feels like today once we get into these different positions. Impacting factors such as, what are you doing for work, or what are you doing during your day? If you are working at a computer, or you're gardening, or you're crocheting, or you're driving a lot, you're in a very kind of crunched forward position for a long period of time, which is going to create challenges. And we teach our body how to move. And so the more we encourage it to be in this position, the more it thinks that that's the position we want to be in. So a lot of the things that you learn in terms of strengthening and alignment is going to help you to combat those throughout the day. So we want to be able to get up and stand and stretch and move, so that we're not staying in this forward position for a long period of time. And then that is leading to issues over the long term. And like I said before, with sitting and standing, we want to find ease here. So we're going to learn how to put pressure evenly in our feet or our sit bones in order to make sure that we are sitting up with ease and comfort and strength. Known injuries are definitely going to be something that might be impacting this, or just different discomforts that you've had throughout your life. If you remember when you were 10 that your low back hurt because you were carrying a book bag, or your shoulders or something like that, and it lasted for a really long time, and then all of a sudden your hips started bothering you, but your shoulders stopped bothering you, that might be something that could be impacting how you are standing, and you've just basically started to compensate and it's moved into your hip. So working on trying to find the true starting point, as well as getting to the foundation of what is going on with some of your imbalances, will help you make sure that you address the issues rather than just put a band-aid on them. And then you have to just keep fighting to make sure that band-aid is staying there. If we address the foundation, you can just grow beyond that at some point. And then finally developing a movement plan. Whether it's strength training, mobility, or just something that is more fun to you that you enjoy doing, making sure that you have a plan to keep moving and stay active will help you stay functional. You want to find ways to train and cross-train for the things that you enjoy doing. So if you want to be able to run around with your grandkids, or you want to be able to just stay hiking and doing the things that you want to be able to do, making sure that you can bend forward, you can walk, you can move all over is going to be really important in terms of being able to continue to do that. So we need to train our body to be able to continue to do those movements. So when we're talking about alignment, we are going to be starting to kind of go get the concept of what we're doing, and then we're also going to try to make that into a reality in your body. And again, if anything just doesn't seem to click, or you're struggling with it, either feel free to send me a message and I can help you out or help you kind of move forward with it. Or you can also reach out to a local movement professional, and then they can hopefully help you set up to figure out where that alignment is struggling. So as you can see in these photos, this is kind of the differences between two different types of alignments. On the right side, you have the guy with the green, and he is aligned, he is stacking. So when I mentioned that stacking before, this is what I'm talking about, where you can see that everything is on top of each other. And then if you look at the left side with the guy in red, you can see how different things that are out of alignment tend to pull other things out of alignment. And that's where we're going to kind of be focusing on a little bit today, is making sure that you're not having any of these imbalances that are pulling you out of those alignments. One thing will lead to others. And so everything works up and down the chain. And when I say the chain, this is what I'm talking about, is that, you know, from your pelvis or your hips, if you have some imbalance there, you're likely going to have something up the chain. So in your rib cage, in your shoulders, in your head and neck, or down the chain into your legs, knees, ankles, feet. So we're just going to be talking about how those things interact and how one can lead to the other. And that's why full body strength training, full body alignment is really going to be the thing that you want to be focusing on in order to maintain ease and function throughout your life, so you can just keep doing the things that you want to do. So we are going to move into feet and ankles. So when I'm talking about the feet and ankles, I'm going to go into a variety of different things because your feet are really where you start contact with the ground. And that's going to be something that is going to help you as you work up your body or up your chain. If your feet are not in contact with the ground appropriately, you're going to find a lot of challenges as we work up. So every time that we try to align one thing, we're going to start at the feet and work our way up. So if we look at this first picture here, and you can see that the footprints are like this, you can see how there's a little bit of space where the arch is supposed to be. If you've ever walked in sand or anything where you've left a footprint, you've probably seen how your footprint is. Or if you have sneakers or shoes and you've seen where you've worn out the shoe, you can kind of see where you put pressure. So when we're looking at this footprint here, this is a fairly ideal footprint as to what we're looking for. Now, everybody is going to be different. Some people do have flatter feet than others, and that is a genetic thing. It's not that I'm looking for something specific that's the same for everyone. I'm looking for alignment and for making sure that things are stacking on top of each other. So if I were to look at this footprint, I would see that there is arch support there because there is space off of the ground where the arch is. All 5 toes on each foot are getting in contact with the ground, and the heel has even pressure. So all of those are things that I would be looking for to make sure that I can see that you are walking and standing appropriately for that ease and comfort, rather than kind of compensating and that you are going into your ankles or your low back or things like that that are essentially impacting the way that your feet are contacting the ground. These other 2 photos, you can just see one in the center is just certain ways to strength train your ankles, to challenge your balance, to challenge your feet so they're able to be nice and strong. And then this other photo is just, you know, a way that you are showing that when you do have lack of ankle stability or foot stability, you're much more likely to roll your ankle or create injuries. So we're going to go into considerations for the feet and ankle. And like I mentioned, the feet are your contact point. So we're going to go pretty into detail with here and then a little bit less as we get up the body. So when I'm looking at feet here and I'm doing an assessment, I'm going to be looking for feet width. So if I see that somebody is standing way out here, then I know that their feet are not stacked under their hips. If they're right here with their big toes touching each other, they're also not stacked under their hips. So I'm going to be looking for feet width for somebody. And I'm also going to be aligning that with the rest of their legs all the way up to their hips here. So that's going to be something that's going to be relevant in terms of making sure that you are able to stack. If your feet are too close or too far apart from each other, the rest of this is not necessarily going to work or make sense. You've got to make sure that you're stacked first. When we're looking at the arch support, I mentioned that before about how we want that to be able to support our body all the way up. And so what we're going to do here in a moment is try to stand up and try to create a little bit more arch support in our feet. One thing that you are going to see as either a challenge with the arch support is either pronation or supination. You may not have this, but I see that pretty much everybody has at least a mild degree of this, unless they've, either trained it or they have done things in their past that have encouraged this arch support and pronation, supination to be present. But we'll talk about that again in a little bit. And then with the alignment, again, we want to get the hips over the knees, over the feet and ankles. Toe health is going to be something that is going to be relevant in terms of making sure that you are standing up nice and strong and that you are keeping your feet in the correct position. And that's something from bunions to calluses that you will see those pop up if you are not holding your feet in the proper alignment. Abduction and adduction, so if your feet are out like this or in like this, that's something that's also kind of keeping you out of that positioning. It's okay if there's like little bits there, but we want to mostly be straightforward. So we're going to go a little bit into pronation and supination here. So these are the right foot. All three of these are the right foot. So the one in the center is normal, stacked, as you can see here. It's one thing on top of the other, on top of the other. And then in the others, you can see that on the right foot with the pronate, the ankle is rolled in. This is the one I see most common. And then this is also impacting your arch, which I will show you in a moment. And then supination is also impacting your arch, but in the opposite way, is that your ankle is rolling outwards here. So if we're looking at overpronation, you can see here a few different things that are happening. So if we're looking at the center photo, you can see how flat that person's foot is. And a lot of that is not because of genetics. They might have some level of genetics that is keeping their foot to be a little bit flatter than what you would typically think of for an arch. But you can see here how his ankle is rolled in. And that's what's creating that flat foot. It's because of the pressure of the leg on the inside of the ankle that's creating this flat foot appearance, which is then getting rid of the support from the arch. And the arch truly supports all the way up to our heads. So as we're looking at this, there are things that we can do to strengthen this position. Am I looking for a specific height to get the arch to? No. All I'm looking for is aligning these bones on top of each other, just like what I saw here. I want to try to get these bones aligned rather than trying to get the arch to a specific height. But that flat feet with the ankles rolling in is one of the things that I'm looking for if I'm seeing that feet are not in the proper alignment, as well as bunions, which I had mentioned before. Now, a bunion is when there's pressure on one joint that ends up pushing it out. So if I stand up and I am either out to the side or my ankle is rolled in, my big toe is being pushed out that way. And this ankle or this knuckle is being pushed that way. So I'm putting a lot of pressure on the inside of my arch. I'm getting my knuckle to go out that way, my toe to go in to go that way. And so I'm creating this pressure at that joint, which is known as a bunion. So things to do to help prevent that is you want to think about spreading out your toes. Again, working on that arch support, general feet strength. If you experience things like plantar fasciitis, there are things to do that will help with that, but all of this will help prevent that plantar fasciitis. Things like rolling your foot on a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball or golf ball will also help with that and will help kind of get those tissues to work a little bit better. So if you're struggling to lift that arch or struggling to get activation, that's a tool that you can use to help strengthen. Oversupination, not as common, but I definitely see it. If you see that you are walking on the outside edge of your shoes, that you have a huge arch if you were to take a step in the sand, or if you roll your ankles a lot. That's another common thing that will happen if you're on the outside of your ankle. You can also lead to further injuries, things like arthritis, just because of lack of alignment and things not moving as the way that they were intended to move. So I want to, before we go into the knee alignment, I want you guys to all stand up. And we're going to come to look at our feet here. And so I'm going to use this image kind of as we go through this because it will be relevant to making sure the feet are in alignment here. So I want to start by making sure that my feet are at the right distance. So what I'm going to do, and if you were to look at this picture for the knee alignment, this first image, you can see that from the center of the hip bone to the center of the kneecap to the second toe is how we want to align. So I'm going to look down, and if I can't find where the center of my hip is, I'm going to lift this leg up, and there's going to be a spot that kind of pops out a little bit. So that's your hip flexor muscle. So if you can find that little spot that lifts up, that's where we're talking about. Then I'm going to kind of look down over this leg. I'm going to come straight down to the center of my kneecap. And then I'm going to try to come straight down to my second toe. So if that looks good, awesome, you're aligned on that side. Then we'll come to the other side. And again, find that center of the hip. I'm going to find the center of the kneecap, and then to the center of the second toe. And again, I'm finding that alignment. So very nice getting into that position. If you are finding that your toes are out or in, or you're in not straight forward, try to make sure that the toes are pointed straight forward. Now, looking down, do you see if your ankles are rolling in, or if are you on the outside of your feet? If your ankles are rolling in, I want you to think about imagining you have medicine caps under your feet. One goes one way, the other goes the other. So with a medicine cap, you have to push down and twist. So we're going to think about that. So the right one's going to push down and twist out to the right, left, push down out to the left, but they're not going to move anywhere. You're creating torque here. So I'm going to do that little twist. It's going to lift my arch up. I'm going to push more into my big toe, and I can feel my legs rotate out. Okay, so that's going to be how I'm going to align the feet to make sure they're in the right position to help support me on the way up. Now, if you are finding you're like, oh, this feels kind of weird, I feel like this is a little too narrow, try to step out a little bit. Or if you feel like it's too wide, try to step in a little bit. Play around with it. You don't necessarily need to be in a specific spot. You need to be in the right spot for you. And so it's going to not necessarily be super easy for somebody to see what feels right to you. So making sure that if you are going to be working with someone in the future, you communicate with them. Whenever I talk with someone and ask them about their posture and set them up, constantly asking questions, because I want to know, what does that feel like? Because if it doesn't feel right, no matter what it looks like to me, it doesn't matter. What matters is how it feels to you, and that you feel strong in that position. If somebody's saying, that feels weird, or that doesn't feel quite right, I know we're not quite there yet. So if you're at that point, you're feeling, this doesn't feel quite right, either just kind of stay along and we'll just keep working up the body and see if maybe something else is what we need to align. Or you, like I said, is go and see a local movement professional to help you get into what you need to be for your positioning. So that's for the feet, and we're going to work our way up from there. So noticing how your feet are in contact with the ground. Feel where the pressure points are in your feet. Imagine that perfect footprint in the sand that I showed you earlier. Are you mimicking that? Or do you feel like your arch is way lifted or way on the ground? Again, it's okay wherever it's at. It's just we're starting to recognize where this is so we can build this awareness and grow from there. Okay, so you can have a seat or relax from there, or just keep practicing that if that feels good to you. And then, like I mentioned before, in terms of the knees, is the foot width, pronation, supination, and the abduction and adduction are very much going to be relevant here. So if you're looking at this picture, you can see how the foot width is relevant to what we're talking about. If the feet are too close together, the knees are going to be too wide, and we're not going to be stacked there. If the feet are too close together or too far apart, the knees are going to come in, and we're also not going to be stacked there. I've seen both create pain in the knees or the hips, sometimes in the feet. But typically, if you're just not in like an alignment standing, you're going to have some sort of ache and pain, at least at some point in your life, maybe not right now, but working to make sure you are in that alignment will help prevent that stuff from happening at an increased rate. So we want to make sure that we are aligned properly, thinking about getting the knees over the feet and over that ankle. And so one thing that I find when people get into this position is sometimes their knees hurt when they try to line their knees up over their feet. So when I see someone and they get their feet into alignment, it looks really, really good. And then they're standing up, but then their knees are going in like this, or they're straight, but they're just like slightly rotated in. I'll ask them, say, do you have pain? Does that feel okay? And they was like, it feels a little weird on my knees. So one thing to think about is your outer hip muscles right here. So the top of your glute muscles, that's gonna, if you think about screwing your feet in and rotating the knees out, you should feel these muscles work up here a little bit. If you do, try to engage those to help you stand up straight. That should help with any pressure on the inside of your knees. So if you're having pressure on the inside of your knees, screw your feet in and engage those outer hips. That should hopefully help line you up a little bit better. So really making sure that we are stacked on there. And again, really preventing pain. If pain is something that you are feeling, you are not where you want to be. Again, work with somebody that can help you figure that out. All right, moving up to the hips and the pelvis. So basically, the pelvis can create a lot of challenges. It may be from the feet working up to the pelvis. It may be from the pelvis working down or up. But a lot of the times, the most common thing that I'll see is pelvic tilts. So when somebody has a pelvic tilt, they are either anterior or posterior. A lot of the times they are anterior, which looks like this. So my butt's sticking out a really big arch into my low back. If I have a posterior pelvic tilt, I'm really tucked under, I have a really long low back, and I may be like this here. So I'm really rounded into my upper body, and I have my hips forward and my shoulders are back behind my hips. So I'm really not in the stacked position here or here. So you can see that if I get my pelvis into this stacked position, it's really going to help me be in this alignment, and it's not going to be pulling my legs in one direction or pulling my upper body in the other. So getting into that pelvic alignment is going to be really helpful. I also see rotated pelvises. Sometimes that's not as common. That's going to be a lot of times for people with some connective tissue issues. So if somebody has hypermobility, I see more frequently in that, or if they've had an injury or something, that a repetitive movement that they've done that has kind of kept them in this position or this position for long periods. And that is going to likely create a lot of aches and pains and issues throughout your entire body all the way. So if we're looking at pelvic instability, we're looking at a variety of different things. SI pain. So SI pain in these little joints, the SI joint is between the sacrum and your hip bone. And so that area is pretty tight. And so sometimes it can get really, really sticky, which creates pain. Sometimes it can be unstable, which creates pain. And sometimes it can get kind of stuck off kilter a little bit. And that definitely can create pain. So SI pain is going to be coming from that area. It can lead to sciatic pain, which is going to be nerve pain kind of down the back of your leg, all the way potentially down towards your heel. So strengthening and aligning is really going to help you in those positions. You can also have glute, hip, low back pain, as well as anywhere else in your body, as I showed you before, where that pelvis alignment is. If you're really out of alignment, that can create issues all the way up and all the way down. And finally, if you have pelvic instability, it's hard to challenge your core. So making sure that you stabilize your body and really learn to control movements before you're working on big, exciting movements or things like that that are going to create potential challenges. You really want to learn to stabilize your core and stabilize your pelvis. All right, so I'm going to have you guys stand up and we're just going to go over this alignment again from the pelvis down. And then I'm going to go over some questions after I get through this and then like come into the low back. So what we can see here is similar to that image that I showed you at the beginning of before we went over the feet, where the guy in the green was all stacked and the guy with the red was kind of off a little bit. So with this, you can see how if I'm overpronated in the foot, my leg will internally rotate, my knee moves in, my hip will have some internal rotation, and my pelvis will tilt forward. So one thing will lead to the next, will lead to the next, will lead to the next. If the pelvis is tilted forward, it might go all the way back down. So all of these things can feed off of each other, and that's where working on all of them together is going to be the most helpful. So we're going to go
Julia,
over. Yeah.
So sorry, Julia. Just people are having a little hard time seeing when they're not able to adjust their screen so that your video is larger. So I don't know if you can stop the presentation
Okay.
when you're showing things, just so folks can see that larger.
I can do that.
I know that's a little bit of a back and forth, but
no problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and come into this stacking position, and then I will bring us back to, or I'll have questions after this, and then we will go back to the presentation after that. So let's get into our alignment. So bringing your feet to that position where they are stacked under your knees, remembering coming to the center of the hip, to the center of the knee, to the second toe on both sides. Think about screwing your feet into the ground. So creating that torque. You've got those medicine caps in on the ground, and you're opening up those arches. The knees are rotating out. Now start to recognize, where is your pelvis? Are you sticking your butt out, or are you really tucking? If you're not sure, take your thumb and put it on the top of your hip bone in the back. You're gonna wrap your pointer finger around the front of the hip bone. So I'm in this position where you can see where my pointer finger is relative to my thumb. If you are like this, and your pointer finger is pointed straight down and your thumb is up towards the sky, you want to think about tucking your pelvis. And what that means is you want to think about the front of your hip bones coming up towards your rib cage here. So you want to keep your glutes quiet. You don't want to be squeezing your butt to push your hips forward. You want to engage your core muscles. So you want to tuck your pelvis, pull your hip bone up to your rib cage, and that should activate your core a little bit. When you're in that position, you should feel nice and tall through the low back area, pelvis, and all the way down. Okay. So let's go through any questions that you guys might have before we work our way back up.
Okay, so skimming the chat, some folks just had questions about, chiropractor or physical therapist when you were mentioning like who to follow up with. So what would you recommend, and which type of provider for what issues?
Yeah, so basically you could go to any physical therapist or chiropractor. Physical therapists are a little bit interesting because they should be able to help you with alignment, but if you are going to them for help with getting alignment, it's going to be hard because they are a lot of times restricted by insurance so that they can only help you with like one thing that you're dealing with. So a chiropractor might be a better person to go through, or somebody that is certified as like a personal trainer that works in like alignment or functional movement or things like that. That's something that I would look for.
Great, thank you. Then we had a question about a balancing exercise, balancing on one foot at a time. Is that something you recommend?
Absolutely. And there are specific things that you can do to balance specifically so that you are challenging and strengthening in the way that you want to. So a lot of the times what I see when people are balancing is they do this. And that's an exaggeration, but they're sticking their hip out. So you want to make sure that you are balancing in this stacked position to enforce what you're working on here. So it's really about control, not just standing on one foot, but making sure that you're balancing appropriately on one foot to help with what you're working on.
Wonderful, thank you. Then there's some questions about orthotics. Should you use them? Is there a downside? And then if you have any recommended orthotic companies that you...
Yeah, in times where you can't pay attention, I find orthotics to be really, really helpful. So if you are walking around all day at work and you're really into your work and you cannot be, distracted, or you're hanging out with your grandkids and you're just running around because they're just crazy and running around too, and you can't pay attention to how your feet are, then orthotics are super, super helpful. You don't want to rely on them though, because eventually your feet start to get kind of lazy and fall in. So that arch support ends up becoming a little bit more detrimental. So you want to have a balance between them. You want to challenge your feet and strengthen your feet when you can pay attention to it, but then you also want that support for when you can't. And then in terms of brands, either if you are really, really struggling with this, going to a podiatrist to help you get a specific one for your foot specifically. Otherwise, I know that Superfeet is a really good one that I've had experience with in the past.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then maybe two more, and then we'll get back to it. So someone just asked if a bunion is a hereditary thing or a problem with poor posture.
I think it can be both. I've seen most often it's like a posture thing. Every time I see someone come in with a bunion, I can see how the posture is impacting it. So if you're falling in on your arch, a lot of the times that's going to create a bunion. The other thing is shoes. If you wear like pointy high-heeled shoes for a long period of time, that can create a bunion too, because your feet are being pushed into this tiny little like space. But a lot of the times it is just postural, and you can kind of, even if you do have a genetic aspect to it, you can kind of do things to combat that. Just like high blood pressure, it might be genetic, but you can do things that are going to help prevent you from dealing with that as much as you would otherwise.
Right. And then I guess last one for right now would be someone has some nerve pain in one of their toes. Would physical therapy help?
Yes, that would be something that I would go to a physical therapist for. They will be able to kind of like look at and do an assessment and see if there's anything else that is dealing with that. And then if for instance, they are limited by the insurance in order to be like, well, I can see that it's coming from your ankle, but because you came here for a toe thing, we can really focus on the toes. They'll kind of help guide you to somebody that will be able to help you with that, or they'll be able to hopefully get you in a different way, so that they can truly help make sure that you are not dealing with that nerve pain.
All right. Yeah, I think we can keep rolling along.
Awesome. Okay. So I am going to open this back up again here. One moment. Okay.
And then actually, while you're doing that, I'll just let folks know too, Julia is spotlighted. So she should be the largest screen or window on your screen right now. And then when she goes into presentation, you can actually adjust the size of her presentation. There's a little bar that has two little lines. If you pull that, kind of dragging it to the left, that'll make the presentation smaller and her video screen larger. So if you're having any issues with seeing either one of those, you can adjust the size yourself on your screen.
Yeah, so if you guys want to try that, you're welcome to do that. I am going to get going into the next section, but if I am doing demos, I can also still just get rid of the share screen too. Okay, so we're going to move up towards the upper body. So looking into the low back, we're going to be seeing, I mentioned earlier with the anterior tilt, how you're going to have that exaggerated lumbar curve or low back curve. That's going to create pinching, pain, lack of stability, lack of core strength. The sway back, I also demonstrated that earlier, where the shoulders were back and the hips were forward and ultra tucked. That's also pain and issues that are going to create instability. And then core stability is going to help you maintain that positioning, maintain your pelvic alignment in the way that you want it to, so that you are in control. Upper back and shoulders. So a lot of the times when people have pain in their low back, it can be from a variety of things. But one thing that it can be from is lack of mobility in the mid back. So a lot of the times people stand up by arching into their low back because they don't have the mobility in the mid back. And that's something that we want to be working on in order to stand up straighter and to have more strength, rather than putting all of this pressure onto our low back, which is really there to just kind of stabilize us. And so what you can see here too is how these different things are in relation to each other. So if I come into this position where I am just sitting facing straight forward, my shoulders, my shoulder blades, my arms, my chest, my rib cage, and my head are all very connected. So getting into how all of these things can impact each other. If I round my rib cage forward, so I'm just paying attention to rounding my rib cage forward, I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm going to round forward, and then look what happens to my arms. They come forward, and my head also comes forward. Okay, so that's going to end up pushing things down the line as well. I'm feeling impacted in my low back, my pelvis, all of that. So I'm going to come back up to seated again, sitting up nice and tall. Now I'm going to think about just pulling my arm bones forward. And that also pulls me into that rounded upper back head forward position. And then I'm going to come back and one more time, bring my head forward, which is also going to pull me into those positions. So the reason I wanted to show you that is because if my rib cage is forward without that thoracic mobility, so I'm trying to stand up through my low back and I'm doing this kind of like rounded upper back position, that's impacting my neck, head, and shoulders as well into my low back. So I'm really trying with this stacking and alignment to get into a position where my rib cage sits on top of my core and my pelvis appropriately, so I'm not pulling everything forward. I'm really working against gravity here, so I'm trying to have gravity not be pulling me forward. As soon as my head is forward, gravity is pulling me in this direction. So if I can stack and be straight up and down, gravity is not pulling me forward or backward. I'm just in line with that. And that's really, really a helpful thing to think about, is if you're thinking about how do I fight gravity? As soon as you're forward or back or to one side or the other, you're kind of being pulled in that direction even more. So pain in the shoulder can be leading from this. Shoulder blades, sometimes I'll see shoulder blades sticking out or elevating. Those are things that you can work on to strengthen those muscles, to hold them in place. So again, strengthening is going to be something that's really going to be helpful here. But first, you also need to learn how do you align so you can strengthen appropriately. So thoracic mobility, that's what I was talking about, that mid-back openness and trying to lift from there, and back strength to help hold you in those positions. Those are going to be how you're going to really feel nice and strong through the upper body. And then the head and neck, that forward head position. So that first picture that I showed you guys with the girl that was on the screen, you could see that here too. One girl is reading and she's in this really rounded neck position, which is going to create pain in the base of the neck or the base of the skull, the neck, maybe the base or the tops of the shoulders, maybe some tightness and pain through there. And then in this third picture, this same really rounded position, lots of tightness through there, but in a different type of way. And so one thing I like to do in order to make sure that I am sitting up nice and tall is I'll bring my hands behind my head and bring my elbows wide and bring my head back with my chin tucked, and I'll lift my chest up. Now, if you're having pain in your low back doing this, that's an idea that, or that's an example that maybe you are arching into your low back a little bit too much. So if you're feeling pinching in your low back, I would back off from that. It should feel like work in the upper back and maybe a little bit of a stretch in the neck. You shouldn't feel like you're super working your neck. You should be looking straight forward. It should feel strong and opening, not painful. If any of this stuff feels painful, back off. It never should. And I am not somebody that is trying to push people through pain. That's not something that I agree with. I think that it's more about finding what feels right to you and how do we improve and strengthen that in a way that is effective rather than putting you through more pain. So, and tuck neck is something that you might see from people if they're like sitting like this from cell phone or whatever. It's that really straight, long neck and then like a really curved top of the neck. It's a very, very common thing now. So like I said, excessive curving at the top of the neck or at the base. And then you can see here too, is if your head is forward, how much those muscles are being pulled into different directions and how that might be impacting the rest of your body. So when we're talking about breathing, how this is relevant, we're going to be looking at the muscular tightness. So when you are breathing through your chest and you're using your chest muscles rather than your diaphragm, which I'm not going to go into too much detail here, you want to be, your muscles might get a little tight in your chest. So working on breathing through your diaphragm is going to be something that's going to help you breathe better. Mind-body connection, when you are breathing more in control, you're breathing through your diaphragm, that's going to help your mind-body connection, which is going to help you stand up straighter. The more aware you are, the more you know when you're doing the things that are pulling you out of what you're trying to do. So building that awareness, building that connection is really one of the most important things you can do when trying to build strength, when trying to challenge yourself, and when trying to improve upon anything that's related to body movement. Abdominal pressure and control, those things also come back to breathing. As we trap the air in our stomach, or we learn to breathe with control, that's going to help us move with confidence and strength. And postures, we've got multiple different types of posture. We've got active postures, which is something like when you're working. So I use dentists, for example, because they're always in this rounded position, and it's really hard for them to get out of that position. So learning how to do things to kind of prevent that. Ergonomics, you can set yourself up, but sometimes it can only get you so far. If you are standing at a desk like how this woman is, that it can get you pretty far. That can really, really help. But if you are coming back to like the dentist example, they might be at a desk sometimes, but ergonomics is not going to get them very far because it can only set them up so far. So learning how to challenge this and strengthen that so that they can learn to combat it in between those sessions of being in this rounded position is really going to help. And then finally, resting in a sitting and standing position shouldn't be hard. It should feel of ease and comfort until something else is brought into it. So like a computer or a cell phone, or you need to twist and look at something. But other than that, just sitting or standing should bring ease. Finally, we're going to go into sitting and standing postures and just work all the way from the feet up. And then we'll do some questions after that and we'll go from there. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment here. And so we're going to go back up to standing postures. So I want you guys to go ahead, stand back up. We're going to come in to get your feet on the ground, screw your feet back into the ground, making sure that you're standing up nice and tall, making sure you're in that alignment that you want to be in. It should look like your ankles are stacked on top of your heels. You've got at least a little bit of arch support in there. And then you want to get to the spot where you're keeping your pelvis tucked. So you don't want to be out like this. You don't want to be too far forward. So make sure there's a little bit of a dip with this finger, but not a super dip. And that's where we're looking about 20 degrees dip from thumb to pointer finger. So that's where I'm looking to go. And again, it should feel like core engagement, not glute engagement. Your glutes should be fairly quiet. From here, this is the part where if you have a really tight low back, from a variety of different reasons. It could be that the muscles back here are tight, your hip muscles are tight, you have pain in your low back, or there's something in a different area of your body. I want you to think about arching from kind of like your bottom rib area. So lifting up your rib cage rather than arching into your low back. So I'm lifting up my rib cage. I'm not arching into my low back. Okay, so I'm keeping stable through here. I'm keeping my pelvis tucked. I'm lifting up my rib cage. So I'm feeling some activation in my mid back here and length through this lower back. So the space between my ribs and the top of my hip bone, that should feel long and strong, but not arching. I'm lifting up through that mid back. When I lift my mid back, or as you lift it, notice what happens with your shoulder blades. So go ahead and relax your chest and your rib cage down. Then lift the rib cage and just recognize what happens with the shoulder blades. They should more easily just kind of fall down your back. So that's why when somebody says, oh, just pull your shoulders back and down for posture, doesn't work so well. Because if you're in this position and you pull your shoulders back and down, does it look like I'm in good posture? No, I'm not. So thinking about being in alignment, I want to think about getting myself to be ease in this position. So stacking my rib cage over my pelvis so my shoulder blades can just slide down because gravity is pulling them in the direction I want them to. And then I'm going to bring my chin tucked and bring my head back. So I'm stacking my head over my shoulders. Once I'm in this position, I should feel fairly strong and tall. I should feel like there is a certain amount of ease here. If you're feeling like this is hard or there's not ease, there might be certain things that you need to work on that are preventing you from getting into this position. So really mobilizing and strengthening certain areas of your body and joints and muscles will really help you get here. So that is your standing posture. I'm going to have you guys grab a seat and we're going to sit down. And if you have a hard seat, great. If you don't, that's okay too. And first I want you, when you're seated, I want you to think about where are you putting pressure in the seat? Do you feel like you're like leaning onto the backs of your thighs? Or do you feel like you're sitting onto your tailbone? So you're all the way back, almost onto your back. If you're on either of those, I want you to think about tucking and untucking your pelvis. So it looks like this if I'm untucking and tucking. So I'm kind of sticking my butt out and then pulling it underneath me. And I'm feeling my stomach muscles change as I do that. So as I'm working through this, I want to find that center point. So I'm going to tuck and untuck until I find the center point of my sit bones. Once I find that center point, all of a sudden, it should just feel like you're sitting tall. And it should feel fairly comfortable and easy. And as long as you find those center sit bone points and you just try to lift your chest over your hips, keeping your core tight, you should feel like fairly easy to sit here. Okay, so there are the sitting and standing postures. Let's go over any questions.
Okay, there weren't as many recent ones, but there was something about which way is the pointer finger supposed to be facing when having them on the hip bone? I think that was when you were doing a demonstration a little while back.
Oh, yes.
I don't know. Yeah, okay.
So if you are, so basically if I'm here and my thumb is here, okay, I want my pointer finger to go along my hip bone. So this is my hip bone here. And so I'm trying to lay my thumb and my pointer finger on that so I can see how the alignment of my pelvis is. And so as you kind of pull the front of the hips up, you should shorten that position so it's not pointing down as much. It should kind of point a little bit more forward. So it's just a way to test where your pelvis is.
Great. And then someone was asking if you'd be able to demonstrate screwing the feet in again, just so that they could see it one more time.
I'm going to move it. I'm going to move the computer down so you can really see what my feet are doing here. So I'm going to imagine that I have medicine caps on my feet here or under my feet. So if I'm pushing into a medicine cap, I'm pushing down and twisting. Okay, push and twist. I'm doing the same thing here, except I can't go anywhere. Sorry, there's a siren outside of my window. So I can't really go anywhere. So I'm just gonna still create that sensation of twisting out. So if I'm here and this is relaxed, I'm going to screw my feet in. So my feet are still staying pointing straight forward, but I created this torque, this screwing, which lifted my arches up. It put pressure into my big toes so that I'm really supporting up through here. And I really brought my ankles out. So if you have like pronated feet and you're more like this, it's going to bring you to this. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've got a pretty specific question. Someone was born with tarsal, condition, coalition. Okay. And they have a triple orthotis fusion. Sorry, reading all the words, not sure. Right ankle and need the left. Okay. Lower back plane. How do I align this fusion? I don't know if you can reference the question. It was a recent one in the chat or not, to better understand what tarsal condition and have multiple and have a triple orthotis fusion. There's a lot going on. It's a pretty specific question. Okay. Yes. So this is being recorded, everyone, as well.
Yes. So what I would say is trying to figure out the rest of your body's alignment as well as your feet and seeing how you can kind of pull them together. I think probably the best thing to do would be working with somebody to make sure that you're doing it correctly, because I'm guessing it's a little bit more complicated than just saying line this up and line that up. So you probably want specific strengthening exercises that are going to help hold you in that position, but also you want to learn what's right for you. And for me, it's really hard to be able to give a straight answer for a specific question, just because I would really need to look at the person in order to know what is going on, as well as do a pretty detailed assessment to see what else might be impacting that or might be impacted by that, that might be feeding into the issue. And so that they're going back and forth off of each other.
And then there are a
So
couple
yeah, I would
more
go see
like
somebody.
specific questions,
No,
but
go
I think
ahead.
just generally, if you want to repeat like tips and tricks, best strategies, especially if it's something that you're out of alignment forever now, what are some good tips and tricks, certain shoes, all those kind of summarize and
Yeah.
recap, I guess.
Yeah, so basically some of the biggest things are you're just trying to find ease of movement for standing and sitting. Standing and sitting shouldn't be hard. There are things that we're trying to do to strengthen them. That's going to help the rest of your life feel better and stronger. So you're really trying to find ways to strengthen your body into alignment or stacking. So thinking about at first with the feet screwing in, what I just demonstrated there is you're pushing down and rotating out. That's going to support all the way up your body. I've had people really feel, we get their arch into alignment and they feel changes all the way up onto the top of their head. It makes a difference. So think about screwing your feet into the ground. You want to think about when you're standing up and you're trying to get your knees in alignment, you want to use your outer hips. So screwing the feet in, the knees will rotate out and the outer hips will engage. Those will help. Those muscles are huge for balance. So someone asked earlier, what about single leg balance? That is going to be so helpful in really trying to align your legs, as long as you're doing it in a way that works well for you. So making sure that you're not just like sticking your hip out, you're really trying to align and balance that way. Thinking about keeping your pelvis tucked. So you don't want your back arch like this, you don't want it forward. So doing specific exercises to strengthen your core muscles and to do movements where you're stabilizing your pelvis, where you're doing movements and the pelvis is not participating. It has to hold strong while you're doing specific movements. In terms of thoracic mobility and rib cage movement, learning to mobilize this area of your back will help a lot in standing up without arching into your low back. That's probably the most common posture thing I see with people, is really arching into your low back and standing up like that. And it might not be as exaggerated as I am. It might be here, but I can feel it if I put my hands on someone's low back. There's a lot of arching there. So really trying to keep your core engaged, mobility in your rib cage, and then just keeping your head back. Your head forward will pull everything forward. So those are kind of the things to work on. Stability and mobility are going to make a big difference.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think just one final question is just asking about sitting cross-legged, if people should do that, if they shouldn't.
I would say that there's nothing that you necessarily shouldn't do. It's just about how much time you're doing it. So you want to break up your movements throughout your day. So you don't want to be like sitting cross-legged for hours at a time. It would be best if you would get up and move or sit in a slightly different position or switch the crossing of your legs. Sometimes put your feet down, sometimes straighten your legs. The more you can move, the more general movement that you have, the better. So that's pretty much it. You can do it, just don't do it for super, super long periods of time.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We're at our time, but I put links into the chat to explore upcoming events, including the next 3 mindful movements. So that's AARPVT movement. You can see that in the chat. So come back next week and the week after, the full month of April. We'll be having these great conversations, and it will be the similar format. So presentation with some demonstration and everything like that. And again, this was recorded, so we'll share it out via email later today or early tomorrow, so you can rewatch and just make sure you got everything down. So thank you so much, Julia, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank
And if
you
you're in the
guys.
path of totality, enjoy that. It's going to be quite the spectacle. So take care, everyone.